I am no different. Matter of fact, my flaws is probably 20 times worse than other people.
Those words hit differently when you know the full story. Karl Malone is undoubtedly one of the greatest basketball players of all time. A two-time MVP and a Hall of Famer. But even he couldn't escape the personal demons that ultimately destroyed everything he built. This is the story of how a legend became one of sport's most controversial figures, the rise of the Mailman. In the annals of professional sports, few stories are as devastating as Karl Malone's transformation from a beloved icon to a vilified figure. Born on July 24, 1963, in Summerfield, Louisiana, Karl Anthony Malone entered a world that seemed designed to break him. Summerfield was a small, unincorporated community in Claiborne Parish, Louisiana, with fewer than 200 residents in the 1960s, a place where dreams often came to die. The cycle of poverty there seemed unbreakable, and young black men had few options beyond manual labor and broken promises. Karl's childhood was marked by tragedy from the very beginning. His father, Shedrick Hay, abandoned the family when Karl was young, leaving behind a wound that would never fully heal.
Malone grew up in Summerfield, Louisiana. When he was a young boy, his father died from suicide, and his mother had to raise him and his other siblings on her own.
This devastating loss would shape Karl's worldview in ways both inspiring and destructive. The family's struggles only deepened when tragedy struck again. Karl's father died by suicide when Karl was just 14 years old. It was a painful truth Malone kept hidden until a 1994 Sports Illustrated interview. The shame and sorrow from that loss would follow him throughout his life, fueling both an unrelenting drive to succeed and a deep-seated need to prove his worth. In the absence of his father, Karl's mother, Shirley Malone, became everything to him. Mother, father, and hero rolled into one. She was a woman of extraordinary strength and resilience, working multiple back-breaking jobs to keep her family afloat. Shirley picked cotton, cleaned houses, and labored at a sawmill to support her large family. But beyond just providing for her children, she gave Karl something far more powerful, an unwavering belief in his potential.
My mom is the only person in my life that every dream I had as a little boy, not my siblings, not my friends, not my teachers, anything that other people would laugh and think outlandish, she would always say, "I know you will."
This belief would become the foundation of Karl's success, but it would also play a role in his eventual downfall. It instilled in him a deep conviction that he was destined for greatness, and over time, that belief evolved into something darker. The sense that the rules that applied to others didn't apply to him. His mother's love was pure and unconditional, but it may have inadvertently planted the seeds of the entitlement that would later tarnish his reputation. Karl's early dreams weren't centered around basketball stardom. He was a boy with grand ambitions that stretched far beyond the cotton fields of Louisiana. Dreams of a life defined by strength, independence, and escape from the struggles that had shaped his childhood.
I don't realize this. I didn't want to be an athlete. I was a little run of the family, and I got bullied when I was a little boy. As I got to the 9th grade, the only branch of the military who flew the Harrier jets was the Marines. And that was the jet that hovered, went out, came back, landed, they covered it up. And I wanted to fly a Harrier jet.
It was only when basketball captured his imagination that Karl discovered his true calling. The transformation was nothing short of remarkable. From a bullied child who once dreamed of flying fighter jets to a towering young man with limitless athletic potential. Once he embraced basketball, he poured into it the same relentless intensity and work ethic his mother had instilled in him.
I want to be one of the best, but if I'm not the best, no one would ever outwork me.
And then I started playing basketball, Karl once said. I told my mom, I want to be one of the best. But if I'm not the best, no one will ever outwork me. That mindset became the cornerstone of his career, a fierce work ethic rooted in discipline and pride. It was a lesson passed down from his grandfather, whose words became Karl's guiding philosophy in life. That hard work could overcome almost anything, and that effort, not talent, was the true measure of a man.
Grandfather always told me, don't let any man outwork you. And if you got two men with the same mentality, it's going to make for a great show.
By his second season, Karl Malone's transformation was complete. His scoring average jumped to over 20 points per game, and his partnership with point guard John Stockton began to flourish. Together, they developed a chemistry that would redefine NBA offense. The Stockton-Malone pick-and-roll became one of the most unstoppable plays in basketball history, a model of precision, trust, and timing that dominated the league for years. As Karl Malone established himself as one of the NBA's rising stars, he appeared to be living the American dream. From the poverty of rural Louisiana to the bright lights of professional basketball, from academic struggles to rookie success, his story embodied the power of perseverance and hard work. On the surface, he seemed to be the ultimate success story, a self-made man who had overcome impossible odds. But beneath this inspiring narrative, darker currents were already beginning to flow, currents that would eventually engulf everything he had built. His rise, once a symbol of triumph over adversity, would become a cautionary tale of how power, fame, and privilege can corrupt even the most promising souls. While Karl Malone was building his reputation as one of basketball's most disciplined and dependable players, a series of personal scandals were unfolding behind the scenes. Scandals that would ultimately define his legacy far more than any record, title, or accolade ever could. The most damaging controversy began in 1983, when Malone was a 20-year-old college student at Louisiana Tech. During the off-season, he returned to his hometown of Summerfield and engaged in a sexual relationship with Gloria Bell, a 13-year-old neighbor. This was not a consensual relationship between peers. It was statutory rape, a felony under Louisiana law, punishable by up to 7 years in prison. What made it even more horrifying was the familiarity. This was a child from his own community, someone he had known for years. On May 3, 1984, Gloria Bell gave birth to a son, Demetress Bell, when she was just 14 years old. Meanwhile, Malone was chasing his basketball dreams, preparing for NBA stardom, and distancing himself from the consequences of his actions. While Malone's career was taking off, Gloria was left to raise their child in poverty, burdened not only by the challenges of motherhood but also by the trauma of abandonment and exploitation. The Bell family, aware of Malone's rising fame and their own financial struggles, ultimately chose not to pursue criminal charges, a decision that would later draw widespread criticism for allowing him to escape accountability. In the years since, public discussion around the scandal has laid bare the full horror of what happened. Not just the act itself, but the way Malone responded to it. It was a haunting reminder that even heroes on the court can be deeply flawed, and that unchecked power often shields the guilty at the expense of the innocent.
And answering the bell every night.
When the Bell family filed a paternity suit in 1985, Karl Malone's response was to deny everything. He refused to acknowledge the allegations, initially denying that he was the father and ignoring multiple court summons. It wasn't until 1988, when a judge ordered a DNA test, that the truth became undeniable. The results confirmed paternity with 99.9% certainty. Even faced with irrefutable scientific evidence, Malone resisted taking responsibility. He fought against the court's modest child support order, arguing that $125 per week was too much for him to pay, despite already earning hundreds of thousands of dollars as a professional NBA player. The most heartbreaking part of this scandal wasn't the legal battle but the emotional damage it caused to the child at the center of it all. Demetress Bell, Malone's son, grew up without ever having a relationship with his father. In a 2008 ESPN interview, Demetress spoke openly about the pain of that absence, saying, "I treat it as if my mother went to the sperm bank. I don't know him." When Demetress finally reached out to Malone at age 17, hoping to build some kind of connection, the response he received was devastatingly cold. Instead of empathy or acknowledgement, Malone reportedly told him that it was too late for them to have a relationship. A rejection that underscored not just his emotional distance but the moral void that had begun to consume the man once celebrated as the Mailman.
Malone was 20 years old, impregnated a 13-year-old, got the fuck away from her, wanted nothing to do with the baby. The story's about, well, you know he was about to be a pro athlete, so take from that what you want.
The callousness of this rejection was staggering. Here was a man earning millions of dollars telling his own son, a child born from his crime, that he would have to make it on his own. There was no compassion, no accountability, no attempt to make things right. Instead, Malone's response exposed a profound lack of empathy and remorse. It stripped away the polished image of the mailman and revealed the unsettling truth beneath his public persona. A man whose success on the court stood in stark contrast to the failures of his character off it.
17 years later, 17 years old, says, listen, dog, it's too late for me to it's too late for me to be a dad to you. You got to go get it out the mud, get it on your own.
The Gloria Bell case wasn't the only example of Karl Malone's failure as a father. Years earlier, in 1981, when he was just 17, Malone had fathered twins, Daryl and Cheryl Ford, with a woman named Bonita Ford in Summerfield. Much like with Demetress Bell, Malone offered little financial support and showed minimal interest in their lives. Cheryl Ford, who would later go on to become a WNBA star, recalled in a 2006 interview that she had met Malone briefly as a child but felt no real connection. "He wasn't there for us," she said simply. A statement that captured a lifetime of absence and disappointment. This pattern of neglect and emotional abandonment stood in stark contrast to the image Malone would later cultivate. After marrying Kay Kinsey, Miss Idaho USA 1988, in 1990, Malone appeared to reinvent himself as a devoted husband and father. He became actively involved in raising their 4 children, coaching their youth teams, attending their games, and publicly portraying himself as a model family man. The hypocrisy was striking. He could be a loving, present father to the children in his household while entirely ignoring the ones he had abandoned. During his playing career, Malone often spoke passionately about hard work, discipline, and accountability, about earning what you get. Yet, those same principles seemed to vanish when it came to taking responsibility for his own children, revealing a painful double standard between the man he pretended to be and the man he truly was.
Even though he was worth millions of dollars, the family just requested $125 a week, $500 a month. At that time, Karl Malone was worth $3 million. But still, he declined that financial request, saying that $125 a week is just too much for him to pay. This man was worth millions.
The irony of Malone's words about earning and protecting what's yours was impossible to ignore. While he preached values of responsibility and integrity, he had abandoned 3 children who most needed his support and protection. His selective application of these principles exposed the deep selfishness at the core of his character. A man willing to uphold discipline and accountability only when it served his own image. The scandal that would ultimately tarnish the end of Karl Malone's NBA career came during what should have been his crowning achievement. In 2003, at age 40, he signed with the Los Angeles Lakers for $1.5 million, joining Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, and Gary Payton in an all-star bid to win a championship. For Malone, it was supposed to be the final chapter in a storied career, a chance to secure the one accolade that had eluded him. Instead of basketball glory, his final season became defined by yet another controversy involving inappropriate behavior toward a young woman. On November 23, 2004, during a Lakers game, Malone made suggestive advances toward Vanessa Bryant, Kobe's wife. His remarks included sexually charged comments and a racially insensitive joke about hunting for little Mexican girls, referencing Vanessa's heritage. When Kobe confronted Malone about the incident, the exchange peeled back the same layers of arrogance and disregard that had followed him throughout his life. Rather than express remorse or understanding, Malone's response revealed the same pattern that had defined him from the beginning. A man incapable of reflection, blinded by ego, and unwilling to take responsibility for the harm he caused.
You work, you earn it, you enjoy your rewards. And when one take from another, you're next. It's easy to take from you. But when you earn it, me personally, through my eyes, with conviction, I will protect it to the death, because I earned it.
Even when caught red-handed, Karl Malone couldn't bring himself to fully acknowledge his wrongdoing. His defensive response and refusal to take responsibility fractured the Lakers' championship hopes and ultimately led to his quiet retirement in disgrace. The pattern was always the same: inappropriate behavior followed by denial, minimization, and deflection. What made these scandals even more disturbing was how Malone's fame and wealth consistently shielded him from real consequences. The lack of criminal prosecution in the Gloria Bell case, despite the clear evidence of statutory rape, exposed the deep flaws in how privilege and power operate in American sports and justice. Malone's status as a local hero protected him from scrutiny, while the Bell family's poverty and small-town circumstances left them with few options. His money and influence allowed him to buy silence, delay legal action, and protect his image. The NBA's response to these controversies was equally troubling. While the league has acted swiftly and decisively against other players for far lesser offenses, Malone faced no official sanctions, no investigations, and no public accountability. He was allowed to continue playing, earning millions, and cultivating the image of a hard-working blue-collar superstar, all while his victims endured the lifelong consequences of his actions in silence. Modern observers have since pointed out the glaring double standard in how misconduct has been handled across eras. Malone's case stands as a grim reminder of how fame, success, and privilege can distort justice, allowing the powerful to walk free while the vulnerable are left to bear the weight of their suffering alone.
You know what? I know what took place. I know what I feel like took place.
The contrast between Malone's treatment and the punishment faced by other athletes for far lesser offenses exposed a deep, systemic problem in how professional sports handle serious misconduct. While some players saw their careers derailed over minor infractions or public controversies, Malone, despite the gravity of his actions, was largely protected. His extraordinary basketball talent, marketability, and status as one of the league's biggest stars appeared to grant him a kind of immunity that others never received. It was a stark reminder that in the world of professional sports, winning often matters more than morality, and that the rules of accountability can shift depending on the value of the player involved.
But the NBA still called him up for the weekend. Said, "Yo, dog, come on. We need you right quick.
Need you out here." But that speaks to the difference between the NBA and NFL.
Perhaps the most disturbing part of Karl Malone's story is his ongoing refusal to fully acknowledge the gravity of his actions. Even decades later, his responses to questions about his past remained evasive and self-serving. He dismissed the statutory rape of a 13-year-old as a youthful mistake and treated the abandonment of his 3 children as ancient history, something that shouldn't define him. But the true measure of these scandals lies not only in his initial actions, but in the decades of denial, deflection, and refusal to make amends that followed. Malone had countless opportunities to take responsibility, to acknowledge his wrongs, seek forgiveness, and use his platform to raise awareness or help others. Instead, he chose the easier path: self-preservation over accountability, image management over justice, and personal comfort over the pain of his victims. These weren't isolated incidents or momentary lapses in judgment. They were consistent patterns that revealed deep flaws in his character. Flaws that fame, wealth, and adulation only magnified. The man who had earned respect for his reliability and work ethic on the basketball court proved utterly unreliable when it came to the most important qualities of human character: responsibility, empathy, and moral courage. As Malone's playing career came to an end, these scandals remained largely hidden from public view. They were buried by media complicity, quiet legal settlements, and the pre-social media era that allowed powerful men to control their own narratives. For years, his public image remained largely intact, shielded from the scrutiny that might have destroyed others. But times were changing. A cultural shift toward accountability was beginning to take hold, and the reckoning that Malone had avoided for decades was finally on the horizon. The reckoning and the fallen legacy. After retiring from basketball in 2004, Karl Malone sought to reinvent himself. He stepped into the roles of businessman, philanthropist, and family man, carefully crafting a new image that emphasized redemption and success beyond the court. For nearly 2 decades, that image largely held, bolstered by a sympathetic media and the absence of online accountability. His 2010 induction into the Basketball Hall of Fame seemed to cement his place among the game's all-time greats. The narrative focused almost entirely on his athletic accomplishments: the MVPs, the Olympic gold medals, the nearly 37,000 career points, while his scandals were relegated to quiet footnotes. For a time, it seemed that history might remember the Mailman for his delivery on the court, rather than the destruction he left behind off of it.
See, talent will take you places that character can't keep you. You could be worth millions of dollars and still be worthless, a worthless individual. You could be rich in the pockets, but poor in